Okay. Well, welcome to Think Twice Thursday with Florida Cannabis Action Network. My name's Jodi James. We're here in the office in Melbourne with Ethel, Rowland.
Hello.
And doing production, we've got Justice James. Say hi, Justice.
I'm still trying to figure out how to share this.
Not a problem. It is not Justice's responsibility if we are choppy. He may be doing production, but he is not in charge of the internet. And I see here that the bill was not past due. So far, so good. We've got all the elements. You should be seeing over my shoulder here, Josephine Cannella-Krehl. Josephine, where are you coming to us from today?
Coming in from the Florida Panhandle up here, St. George Island, Florida, Franklin County, about 85 miles southwest of Tallahassee, as a point of reference for folks who may not be familiar with our little county up here.
Well, you know, your little county about got wiped off the map. Is that what I saw again this week?
Well, we had lots of rain, a little bit of wind. That wasn't too alarming, but then yesterday the water started coming up.
So has it receded
which is
now?
always interesting to see, your bay. But today we're okay.
Good.
It's gone down. Still have standing water in the yard, and we expect that'll dry up. So thank goodness for us. I'm not really sure what happened over there I think it went on land in Alabama. But I've been kind of focused here on stuff, so.
Right. Well, as everybody knows, the Cannabis Action Network is one of the oldest continuing cannabis education organizations in the state of Florida. We've been with you for the last 20-some years, and a lot of our supporters have been there from the very beginning. We understand that social movements require dedication, and that even when we start to win some victories, there's still always work to be done. Today, I'd like to thank some of the doctors that are in our network. Michelle Warner in the Panhandle, Dr. Justin Davis in Gainesville, and of course Dr. Barry Gordon in Venice. It's important as a state evolves that we have some great practitioners that are out there. And if you want to hear more about what Dr. Davis is doing, he's doing his own podcast, and our president, Maria Hurley, was a guest on one of his first podcasts, and that's Cannabis. So check out Cannabis. This week, Miss Manners was going to talk to us a little bit about, you have some Miss Manners stuff to talk to us a little bit about. Mm-hmm. We're going to talk about, and Josephine is joining us as we talk about discrimination, as that relates to the cannabis community. And about 3:25, Eric Stevens is going to join us, and he's going to come in on Zoom as well as we talk about discrimination. This is a huge issue. What do you got for us today, Ms. Manners?
Well, first of all, happy Constitution Day to everyone.
We're going to talk about, and Josephine is joining us as we talk about discrimination. What's we got going on, Josh? As that relates to the community. And about 3:25, Eric Stevens is going to join us, and he's going to come in on Zoom as well as we talk about discrimination. This is a huge issue.
Okay, we'll try this again. So happy Constitution Day, everyone.
No idea, everything's muted.
Oh.
So are we not being heard?
Can we be heard?
No, everything's muted from our side, so they can still hear through the mic, but I don't know where that sound is coming from.
Gotcha. Okay.
So we can be heard.
We should be able to be heard.
All right. Josephine, can you hear us?
Well, she's connected there.
I can hear you.
Fabulous. Us girls got this thing going on then.
So
Happy Constitution Day!
One more time with feeling.
live
know,
stream
I'm
might
gonna
be-
try to tune in to my Facebook and see if I can see.
I think the live stream just died. It kicked me back to the homepage.
Well, we've done 4 of these now.
Goodness gracious. Well, I'm not sure whether to keep talking or not because it's Constitution Day and
You definitely should because it's still recording.
1787. Today is when the founders met and signed the Constitution that came after the Declaration of Confederacy. What was the word? I won't talk about that because I don't know it. So anyway, Constitution Day. So and Ms. Manners. So we were talking about discrimination today, and sometimes discrimination is a good thing because you discriminate against between a poisonous mushroom and an edible mushroom. So there are times when you do want to be
Discernment.
well, maybe, but the cannabis community has been.
Yeah, I think that is one definition of discriminate, to kind of choose between options, but that's a different definition.
Correct. So
We are rethinking things,
We
so
are.
Ethel gets her own definition
twice.
today.
Well, I don't get my own, but I don't get to make it up
So
entirely.
I just consulted Professor Google, and verb first definition is recognize a distinction, differentiate. So absolutely.
Right.
And then it also has the definition of make an unjust or prejudicial distinction in the treatment of different categories of people or things, especially on the grounds of race, sex, or age. So I guess it's important to operationally define what you're talking about. That's one of the tenets in doing research in a laboratory, is to have operational definitions. So
And communication.
You are so appreciated, Josephine. So I was, I am glad to have my definition, my use substantiated. The difference between a poisonous mushroom and an edible mushroom is one kind of discrimination, and we in the cannabis community are discriminated against in many levels, as are so many other groups, and most of it is unjust and unfounded. So one of the ways that people are discriminated against is with their gun rights, Second Amendment rights. And there are a whole lot of people out there for whom they are not getting medical marijuana cards because they want to maintain their concealed carry licenses. And so I was talking about this with a girlfriend in Arizona, which they don't even need a concealed carry license in Arizona. But she got to talking about different diagnoses and for example, schizophrenia, and would I want somebody on schizophrenia medicine to have access to a gun license? And I was like, well, I think it's important to address diagnoses that maybe are not appropriate to have a license, but that the medication is a different thing. And cannabis in many states is medicine. So I think that it's important to not discriminate about medication, and the gun rights is only one of the many discriminations that we have with cannabis, because there's also insurance discrimination, and not all physicians can have their patients use it. We are discriminated on where medicine can be used. Another area of discrimination is property rights. In my head, if I buy something legally and I own it, then I should be able to own it and use it wherever I am. It was legal and it should maintain its legality. And then on, I think, probably every state where we have cannabis laws, the whole plant is discriminated against. And especially federally, the whole plant is discriminated against because we've taken cannabis sativa, which is one plant, and we have said that, well, plants with certain characteristics are okay for people to use and have, and cannabis sativa with other characteristics are still federally illegal. So those are three of the things that I came up with, and there are likely many, many more.
And at the end of the day, it is bad manners to discriminate someone over the use of their medicine.
Yeah. And I think that as individually, say in a hostess situation, that we can provide comfort and non-discrimination to patients who need to use their medicine when they are visiting us in our homes, and find places that a patient can be comfortable using their medication. I think that's sort of
and not only in our homes, but when we have to go and stay at other places, outside of private residences like hotels.
Yeah.
For instance,
Yeah.
to find a safe and legal way for patients to medicate, because that has a serious impact on somebody's quality of life. And, we should be protecting our vulnerable, not putting them in positions where their already compromised quality of life is going to be compromised more, because now they can't even take their medicine that they have a legal card.
Well, and Ethel said they bought it. It's their personal property.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can have your medicine, you just can't use it everywhere. Now that's certainly discriminatory practice.
One of the things that we typically do at the very beginning is we kind of talk a little bit about cannabis news. And one of the things that's in the news this week in Florida is the fact that the patient registry just hit 400,000 patients. So at every 100,000 patients, we're supposed to get 4 new licenses. That was the agreement that the state put together in 2017. So we should have gotten 16 licenses through this. And, one of the areas of discrimination that we have not even touched upon is the way the original licenses were given in Florida, in such a way that you had to be a 30-year nursery in order to even apply for a license, and that farmers who were non-white would not have qualified for a loan. So a black farmer would not have been able to get a loan from the USDA 35 years ago to have even had property. So there were very few people in the state of color or of Asian descent or Hispanic descent that would have even been qualified for the first round. And the state has continued to discriminate and continues to lock the black farmer out of that participation in that program. So, it would be wrong of us to have a discrimination conversation without talking about the fact that in the war on drugs in general, people of poor people of color have been the people who have basically been fodder for the war on drugs. And so for a white woman of my age to talk about discrimination and selective enforcement is a little disingenuous. But there are a lot of types we can talk about. Nikki Fried has said we can own a gun. Now, the paperwork that you have to fill out says you can't. So that's part of that dichotomy. The physician.
Well, it kind of depends with the gun, with the gun issue is kind of the what came first, the chicken or the egg, because there seems to be that little loophole there.
Right.
If you don't have your card when you apply for your gun license, then you can legally answer the question no, and then you get your gun license and then you apply for your medical cannabis card, because there's no stipulation in law that says once you get your card you have to notify them. So
Okay. So if you haven't already
One of
gotten
those
your
little-
card and you're interested in a gun, is that right? Wow.
Well, then, from a theoretical perspective, a patient who wants to get their gun license could surrender their card and pay their $15 to the state, because that's what it costs to surrender your medical cannabis card, and then go apply and, then go see a doctor.
Or you can join Florida Cannabis
far as it
Action
goes.
Network with a substantial gift of $5,000 or more so we can continue to pay our lobbyists going into the next congressional session, because that stuff's ridiculous. Just, have you seen one of these?
And the interesting thing is too that your average Joe doesn't know what those what the statute reads line item by line item like Florida Can does.
Right.
Because who sits down and reads legislation? So
Like Florida Can does.
There's that added value.
Right.
Yes. Send in knowledgeable people who are aware of what's going to happen with this theoretical law that you're going to put on the books, and how's it going to play out in practice, and kind of look at those issues beforehand and be proactive instead of later and be reactive.
Well, that's been the philosophy with Florida Cannabis Action Network. But, a lot of people really don't understand what we do, and certainly the path that Florida Cannabis Action Network has taken with the legislature is slow and daunting. I had a conversation with another movement organization that basically has zero respect for what we do. Those people in Tallahassee can't be moved. There's nothing you can do there. Well, moving them this much,
They're wrong.
opens the door for us to do all kinds of things.
We've been there moving.
I've been
watched it
every
happen.
day. Have you seen these, Josephine? Do you have a Zen pack? Do you get your Zen pack?
I don't think I know what that is.
Club 20 After is one of our organizational partners, business partners, and I was looking at this the other day and checking out my Club 20 After pack. I was talking to my mechanic, actually, and he participates in one of the programs. He gets a ground flower. He said he has bought one of these devices for $7 that you can put the ground flower into it. You can put the cones into it, and the device builds your own cones. So Club 20 After sends you one of these a month. I thought that was very cool, and if you still roll your own, I'm not sure that I would use the cannabis tips and wraps, but we wanted to give a shout out to Club 20 After. They're going to send you everything you need to your home, and I had not thought about this in terms of discrimination, but when I started thinking about people having a lot of anxiety, so a lot of people on these programs have a lot of anxiety, a lot of people are on the program and they're not sure they want their employer to know because we don't have employment protection, and I'm expecting we're going to see Eric Stevens pop on in any second now. So if you don't have employment protection and you have a lot of anxiety, or you don't have a lot of anxiety, what do you do about going and getting supplies? You can have your cannabis delivered. And I guess some of them have some paraphernalia, the medical delivery devices that they will send to you. Zenpack is also an option for people. So we're really grateful that the network of partners that we have are thinking about what people needs. And again, for me, I never thought twice about walking in to a store and buying.
Twice.
I didn't.
Think
And
twice.
buying paraphernalia. But Josephine and I worked really long and hard to make sure that paraphernalia wasn't part of this conversation, that I can legally purchase a medical delivery device. And that's new law. And if we hadn't been involved at the level that we were involved in, you still would not be allowed to go to a local store and pick up a device that you can use on your medicine and call it a medical delivery device. We still wouldn't have that.
And Eric just popped on. Hi, Eric.
Oh, where's
Hey
Eric
guys,
Stevens?
how are you?
Can we see
Thank
Eric
you.
See
too?
you.
Can you show us Eric Stevens for a minute?
Can you see?
Well,
Yes.
oh, there's Eric.
All right. How are you?
Excellent. Good.
Hi,
Very
guys.
good. Eric, where are you coming to us from?
I actually just flew up to help my mom with some stuff in Massachusetts this weekend. So I would be from Miami normally, but I'm sitting here in my little screen porch here in Massachusetts. I got a little
Gorgeous.
face on it.
Where in
It looks
Massachusetts?
beautiful. How's
Yeah.
How are you? You got some nice cool weather up there. I see you got your
Yeah, it's
sleeves on.
yeah. I got long sleeves. I got long pants on.
Nice.
I'm good. How'd you fare through the storm and everything up there?
It was yesterday. We talked about that briefly, but yesterday on St. George Island, it got a little not scary, but I was looking out my window most of the day, and the water kept rising and came across the street, and then my whole street all the way down to the bay was just bay. So that gets a little interesting, but
Absolutely.
that was the worst that we got, and so
That's good. Yeah, now that storm came through by us and it missed us, but I still felt like it had like a lot of wind, like even compared to some of the other storms. We didn't really get any storm surge, I don't think, but I was like,
yeah.
and how slow it was going. So I'm glad
Right.
for those that made it through all right. But I saw there was a lot of damage on a bunch of things up there, the bridge, some other things. So
Right.
our thoughts and prayers and help hopefully will be heading its way up there. But
Absolutely. For our
how are
Florida,
you guys doing today?
good. For our Florida Can viewers who are just popping in, or someone who is not familiar with all of the players, I have Ethel Rowland here at the office with me. My name's Jodi James, and I'm with Florida Cannabis Action Network. And joining us live on remote over my shoulder here is Josephine Cannella-Krehl with MJ Knowledge. Josephine. And Eric Stevens just popped in. Eric Stevens was one of the movers and shakers with Florida for Care, who brought us Amendment 2 twice. Thank you very much for all the work that you've done. And Eric was an early adopter with Florida Cannabis Action Network. You about can't be in Florida as long as Eric's been and not make the rounds with Florida Can once or twice. We're glad to have you. We just started talking about discrimination, and Ms. Manners talked about gun rights and employment, talked about discrimination and where we can use it in property rights, discriminating against someone who is a consumer in a party situation. So we can go all over the place, but I was hoping you would tell us some of your thoughts about employment discrimination and how we can start to turn the tide on that, Eric.
Yeah, so I think that's been something that has been important to me. But in a lot of the states, it either has to implicitly be there, or you need to have someone who's challenged and gone through a variety of court cases, which I think we've seen how those work in the state, and it's not quickly.
No.
And so, I've been thinking about this, and and even more so when I started working in the testing side and the hemp side, there's even people that have been using hemp and CBD products that have been testing above the limit, and some of those are even in court. And so, there's a variety of levels of issues with, the way that testing for this works and how that relates to cause and effect and impairment. And it doesn't relate to the testing that's out there that's being done. And, so I've been trying to think of a way. I mean, we've been trying to push in Tallahassee to get something like this, and even really just to have a substantial bill that will move and get any kind of committee hearings. And, Tina Polsky and Laurie Berman, I think, filed the bill last year on it.
Right.
And, there were some good discussions that were had, but, without it moving forward and getting full support from everybody, it's hard to get a lot of things done. So my thought was going back to my decrim days and thinking of, South Florida normally being more on the progressive side of history. I've seen a variety of kind of human rights acts and other things that are put in place for people that have disabilities or have, different religions or races. And so, it kind of came to me of, is there a way that patients should be legally protected in the same way? And, do they have the authority to do that? And because I think normally when this gets brought up, when they're unsure of what they can or can't do, it's, well, there's federal things or we're not sure, but if they've already taken the role to put something that in place at their local level, I think it would be a lot easier to just add something like this to it. And so my thought was the only place we really have a local voice on this is in Broward, because they have the Broward Medical Marijuana Advisory Board. So I've been speaking to people on that at meetings, et cetera, for a while, and finally got them talking about it, brought it back up again yesterday, I think. Okay. And they're going to be having another meeting next week on some future language to propose to the commission. And so there was a discussion of, they were going to put on potentially some sort of an educational event, and when would that be, and what would the topics be? And then it was like, well, what kind of action can we take now? And my thing was, 100,000 patients now in the state that have come on. This has been an essential medicine and business declaration through this. And then, we've got millions of people that have lost their job or are looking for work.
Right.
And they shouldn't have to not use the medicine they've been using or not listen to their doctor or fear being fired for whatever job they're finally able to get into, right? And
hired.
So,
right. Not be hired.
Absolutely.
And that's what you're going to see.
And I think,
I had.
So that's the hope is to, get an example in Broward, hopefully get that moved forward, get some similar groups set up in other counties and doing, whether it's this or other things that they can continue to work on. I'd hope to see that with, progress being slower at the state level and, us not knowing necessarily where, if they're bringing 10% back and everything else again. I think, the more positive voices and changes we can see from, some sort of, localities on top of this. I mean, I just know it'll be pretty immediately impactful, hopefully, to, the millions of people that, almost half the state lives here between Broward and Palm Beach. So, that's kind of my thought and goal. And, until that's done, I mean, there's a variety of other things to the system, but I think for patients and others, that, has been kind of 1 and 2 for me of things that need to happen for patients' rights. So, I'd love to, we're all kind of geographically set up in different areas. I think it's worth having the conversations with your city or county people that that are in favor of this. And hopefully, I think it's a lot easier when there's some example to point to or some other city or county you can look at. So hopefully we get that in the next month or so here, somewhere down here in South Florida, and we can kind of take it from there.
So, as you're speaking, kind of popped into my head because one of the things that my time up in Tallahassee has taught me is that it's easier to amend a law than it is to pass new legislation.
Yep.
And my mind, because my background is as a social worker, goes immediately to the Americans with Disability Act.
Right.
And if you are familiar with the language in the Americans
Can
for
you try
Disability
again,
Act,
Justice?
which I don't have it memorized,
Huh?
it really would be as simple as just adding
Start again.
2 commas on either side and inserting medical cannabis amongst the list
Right.
of medications that are in there. And then bam, it's just the same thing that, and talking about, you know, non-discriminatory, because one of my things is always medical cannabis patients are treated differently than any other
Right.
patient class in this state, in this country, in this world. You know, it's like, yes, it's a state legal medication and we acknowledge that, but you know, you can't legally use it and not be discriminated against in the workplace. I mean, that is like medical discrimination at its core.
So,
So,
Josephine, if I might pop in here, Joe, I think that's
I
part
know
of.
it's hard because
I was gonna say, I think that is why Eric is got onto something with this local discrimination acts, and you know, I'm a big picture girl, and I like working in Tallahassee, and I appreciate that you're geographically close to Tallahassee. However, in the early days of organizing, I went to the AIDS Coalition locally and asked for them to come on board as a supporting organization. You would have thought it would have been a natural ally. And they were very nice to me and sent me promptly on my way. Their goal was to get people with AIDS back to work. And as long as cannabis was federally illegal, they were going to stay as far away from cannabis as possible. Going to Broward, going to Franklin County, getting some of the same kind of protections. Now, whether or not it's a new protection, or I think, Eric, you've got some big brains who were thinking these kind of things through with you, if I understood the coalition that you've put together. So that, you know, individuals could work locally. What we do in Tallahassee is very specialized. Going to your county commission and getting a resolution that says that Broward County is going to do business with companies that don't discriminate against people on account of XXXXX and their use of medical marijuana. Am I following that? Is that's what you're looking for, right, Eric? Resolutions, local ordinances.
Essentially, it is. Yeah, for sure. I mean, essentially, that would be along the lines of it would be. I mean, I think eventually getting something at the state or federal level, and
sure.
No, Josephine, I'm not a lawyer, so I feel like I have done so much work at this point. But so, you know, I think I don't know how the ADA stuff specifically, you know, working between the federal, you know, system of it, the state side, and then how that then goes to local.
But it's going to have to start at the federal.
Yes, you know, I mean, I'd love to discuss more about that if there's a way to get it. You know, it doesn't need to be on a bill related to this necessarily. If there's something that's already being discussed related to that, it could just be a, you know, insert this kind of a thing for next year. But I think using the discussion of what's going on in some of the larger counties in the state would even more so back that up, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that is kind of the hope and thought there. And then also that maybe they'll set up some similar committees. You know, if you look up the makeup of the Broward board, it's been around for almost 2 years, but I think it'd be nice to have some of these other counties that are more favorable and you know, have really been more honest about kind of trying to have these conversations to do a similar thing, you know, if it's possible. And I think it should and could and would be, but I'll try and send you guys some of the dialogue from last week and, you know, the stuff for next week of kind of what's coming in Broward. And I know there was some discussion, you know, of people that, like I said, you know, before, that may have any federal sort of potential restrictions, if they're federally employed somehow, or if they're in some sort of a safety sensitive position,
Right.
if they're a school bus driver, something, to those lines. I think those are potentially some carve-outs. There was one other concern that was brought up when I was listening in to the conversation they were having. I want to say it related to coverage of workers' comp.
I worry about that. And that's one of the
capacity.
stones.
So I need to delve into that and how that may relate, but that was an interesting thought that I had yesterday when I was listening to them discuss kind of the initial thoughts on that. But they're essentially going to have an emergency meeting next week in Broward, or an extra meeting. I'm not sure if it's called a special meeting, I think. I don't think it's called an emergency, to discuss this topic in depth.
So
good.
They usually meet once a month.
The workers' comp issue is an interesting one, and probably one that, like our movement, would do well to kind of listen in on their conversations. Because last year I spoke at the South Florida Case Managers Network Association down in Davie there in your neck of the woods. And I did an overview. It was on ethical considerations in medical marijuana for healthcare professionals. And the topic was received incredibly well. Like the nurses, I mean, these are folks that work with, end stage people. So they've been through the gamut. There was one person, there was like 350, 400 participants. And then at the Q&A, I mean, everybody was like so excited about the conversation and just to be able to learn how to help their patients. One lady stood up with a question, and she worked in workers' comp, and she was the lone dissenter in that entire room of people, and it scares the workers' comp folks very, very much. And I think we would be wise to learn what it is that makes them especially so nervous, because they have a very strong voice at every level, local municipalities, at the state, at the federal level. So it's interesting that you bring that up.
Well,
we might want to kind of engage them and see if we can ally a bit.
Our goal should be to get people back to work. And, I think that no one is a better example than Irv Rosenfeld, who's been a licensed stockbroker for 40 years and used marijuana every day and has been able to be very successful in his business.
Yep.
And,
Yeah, and he lives in Broward, so he definitely I should reach out to him to make sure if he can call in and speak, either whether it's at this one or at the full commission, because you're right. I think having an example of either somebody who's lost their job and hasn't been able to get one, or has and is being successful in what they're doing, kind of a thing, right? I think those are two ways that people can see this, and hopefully maybe somebody who might not have been as supportive of this. I had somebody on the group from the school board had some potential concerns too, and I don't know if that was thinking teachers, I don't know if that was student, I'm not exactly sure what the thought was with that, but I would think it would be related to faculty and staff issues potentially.
Well, nobody needs cannabis more than a teacher,
but I think just thinking about
a bus driver.
Where the issues could be, right?
Firefighters, I just think that we have to continue to move past people's prejudices, because I get the public safety, right? Public safety, but who is public safety? A firefighter? I want my firefighters coming out of the fire and having access to cannabis. I want my police officer who just had a traumatic experience to be able to have access to this. I want someone who has been hurt on the job or who has anxiety. I would much rather them being using cannabis than some other concoctions that are available and legal to them. So I wonder, and when do we stop giving in?
That's where we need to figure out. Yeah, that's where we need to figure out how to flip the script. Because, like in all of those cases, it's a difference of where the focus is put. Jodi's focus is on the tail end. But if these people have safe and legal access to cannabis, they, their trauma will be healed. They'll be able to better deal with the situations that they're faced with. They'll be able to get back to work.
Right.
Where the other side is focused on is at the front end. But if they, the fear factor that's been pumped into everybody for the past 80 to 100 years, but if they use marijuana, they're gonna not be able to function right, and they'll be at a higher risk. So
Right.
that's what we need to figure out how to flip the script. It's like you guys are looking at the wrong side of this equation. You got to look at the tail end. Like even in elder populations, there's actual observational research that shows folks who have retired and wanted to kind of continue on with working because that gives them a sense of achievement. After they started using medical cannabis, they were able to go back to work and feel like productive members of a society. So if it works for that group of folks, it's going to work across the board because that's what it does. When you get better, you are now better able to handle your daily living, whatever that might look like, and you'll be more productive member of society. That's the part that we gotta,
Yeah, I think that stems from kind of two things, right? I think for the people that don't understand these topics as well as the three of us and many others do, right? I think they see this as two things. It's either has some medical parts or it's more like alcohol. And if they see it like alcohol, they can't see how you could do that and be operating a vehicle, heavy machinery, or some other things. But I also heard some discussion the other day that you can do those on opiates and other things, which wasn't entirely clear to me. So, but I agree with you, and I don't know that there's a perfect answer right now or that we're going to know it, but I think just kind of being cognizant as we head into the conversation, I think what ultimately was one of the things that disappointed me, but with lack of kind of any grouping or people really being able to put some last effort in, they, with a lot of the decrim stuff that we were working on, they tried to find some ways, and the police came and said, oh, well, we need a carve out for if we find it in someone's vehicle, not if they were using it in the vehicle, just
find it.
Right. So there's ways where if we put safety sensitive and that's not defined, that could be extrapolated to everything and then limit out what those things are. And so I listen, I think we need to alleviate and have conversations with people and alleviate their concerns, provide them with as much evidence as we can. But I think we also need to be cognizant we may not get it fully and completely exactly perfect the first time.
Right.
That doesn't necessarily mean it's not worth doing,
right.
But it, if not done correctly, could then proliferate in the wrong way in other places where they say they're doing something, but they're just saying it. It isn't actually affecting anyone's next steps of their actual employment, paying their bills, helping provide for their families, etc. And I think that's the main thing of this is we've got all these people that are now being employed that are working again, that are helping their families again, that are, getting better, and we shouldn't be restricting them from being able to provide for themselves and get the medicine that they need to survive. So, I think we've got a lot of the arguments on our side. I don't think there was enough like headwind and push on this, and there wasn't, I guess, as much of a necessity to do something. I feel like we may have that now, and so I kind of want us to, wherever we can, have those conversations, see what can be done, and if Broward we're able to get something done there,
Right.
let's see what we can do after that. And if it doesn't end up perfect, let's figure out what some better options for the next places that might happen are, so that we can, get ahead of those and get as much as we can, and that will help people. With this one would be my thought. And I'm going to try and look into, I've looked up some different states. If you guys find any additional cities or counties in other states that have done something similar, feel free to send those over to me. I'm just kind of trying to get some different ideas of what this thing may look like, what some different options are, what we've seen other places, and then just hopefully just provide them with enough information that they decide what they're going to do. And ultimately, it's going to be the county commission that will decide what final thing they think they can do. The city attorney, county attorney will feel that they can or can't do. He may decide he doesn't think they have the jurisdiction, although I think that's going to be a heck of an interesting conversation to say why you can regulate disabilities and race and religion and, sexual rights and all those other things for jobs, but not this.
Hey, Eric.
Because I don't know where that applies.
It might be kind of fun for us to team up and put together like a PowerPoint type presentation and see if we can't get in on the 2021 Florida Association of Counties annual conference.
That's a great place to talk.
And open that conversation up, just
especially if we get one passed. I definitely think that's
right.
100%. That'd be grand fun. I tracked their conference in, I think, 2016, and that was a lot of fun. It'd be nice to go as like an official speaker.
I'm thinking, they're also supposed to do some sort of an educational event, that county advisory board. So hopefully, if it's sometime after this has happened, it may be a virtual summit still. If it's this year, we may be able to invite some of the other counties or the association to that, and then use that as kind of a
stepping.
Excellent.
To kind of what's next from there.
All right.
The conversation generally, but I think that's a good idea. There was another thing that I was thinking about before you said that, and now I was intrigued by that, so it'll come back. But,
well, this is an exciting conversation about how we solve problems.
10 minutes.
We're getting into the last 10 minutes of our hour. We've got Eric Stevens with us and Josephine Cannella-Krehl, and they may be a little. Oh, there they are. I was like, nobody moved for a minute, and I was afraid I had them. I've got Ethel Rowland here with me. I'd like to thank Justice James. Ethel, you've been very quiet during this dialogue about employment. You don't want a job. You already do a lot of work for Florida Can.
Yeah, and I'm retired. I'm one of those, of the senior population. And
we talked a lot about employment, and that's what we brought Eric in for. We wanted to talk about that. We see this kind of discrimination in so many other things. Josephine, you've been working, you engaged with us with the employment conversation, but you've been working with people in long-term care facilities, in geriatric professions. Last year we had a bill that was introduced about prohibiting people who were using cannabis, prohibiting the people who designate organs from prohibiting people with cannabis. I don't know what's a better way to put that. That was it was an anti-discrimination bill, that if you were using cannabis, because right now if you're using cannabis medically, you may very well not qualify for a transplant and not be qualified on the transplant list. Do you remember what that bill was?
You will not.
You will not.
when I worked in hospice, I had a patient who was specifically taken off of the transplant list because he tested positive, and the man subsequently, obviously, went on to die. I mean, talk about.
And that was the only factor. That was the only factor.
Oh yeah, that was the only factor. That was it. He qualified.
Yeah, so
he was waiting. He came in to do a consult with us for hospice, and he was like, "Well, but I've been reading about medical marijuana, blah blah blah. I'm gonna go out." It was before we had our law passed. He's like, "I have the means. I'm going to go out to California, not California, Colorado. I've got family there." He went out, he started, and I had gone to my signing you up for hospice today, dude. If you've got the resources and you got the ability and the know-how, I am 100% behind you. What's the worst thing that could happen? So he went out there, he got his treatment going, he was on the transplant list, and then the next time I saw him, which was about a year later, he was admitted into hospice as my patient, and I went in to see him in his home, and I was like, what happened? You were doing so great and you were waiting for your transplant, and he had to come back to Florida. We kind of got to the end of being able to not be home, because at that point you're a medical refugee, right? So how can you be away for that long? He came home,
it's like,
and he was taken off the list, and then he was, admitted as my hospice patient, and I journeyed with him through his death. And it's like, what do you do with that?
I would be angry.
No, and I think that's why we need like a patient's bill of rights or something, that can protect, whether it's disabled. I think that you kind of alluded to it. That's another thing, and I don't really think it's the same, but it kind of is similar. And a lot of these hospice or hospitals or whatever the case may be, assisted living facilities that are afraid because of their federal contract they have and whether they can administer or use it, and having the second person, I think a nurse thing at a school or there was another thing that I've talked to people and heard
talked about
more on. And so, I think I just don't want the patient-doctor stuff to go to the wayside, as it kind of has, I felt like, the past couple of years since the 2017 bill passed. If it wasn't for us suing for whole flower, that's the last thing positive that they did, after 2 iterations.
Well,
so
they did
need to start doing something on this.
Had to,
Right.
And the next, and Eric,
And
the
so
next thing they're gonna do,
I think they're gonna be made to look bad, and we need to show like how this is affecting people's lives and what we can do to help them. So I appreciate whatever you guys can do to continue to assist on this.
we have to constantly remember, you were saying the last thing they did was after we sued them. The next thing they do will be after the Supreme Court decision that on the hearing on October 7th. So some of us will be in Tallahassee on October 7th to hear the oral arguments on the Flora-grown case. So to see whether or not vertical integration is going to stand as public policy. Most people believe that it will not stand based on a reading of the constitutional amendment for medical marijuana that we've got. So we will be back, and when we're back, that means the doors are open. And Josephine mentioned, once they're amending that statute, it's going to be a whole lot easier for us to add good information in there. We can't do that if the people who are watching this and who got to the end of this, and I apologize, I know we had some technical difficulties. We did pay the internet bill. However, as we mentioned earlier, there's been storms in the area, and sometimes with Wi-Fi and storms, you just get what you get. We are going to need your help to be back in Tallahassee. We don't exactly know what the session will look like. We suspect that we will be in masks. We think this little gem will be available in our online store here very shortly. And Ethel is wearing an Ethel Rowland original. Someone asked me how much for one of those. I said $100. They're an original. But we don't get to go and do those things without the help and support of all of the folks who give so generously. It's $5 a month to join Florida Cannabis Action Network, and business members join at $250, so we're really grateful for all of those folks. 400,000 people have legal access to cannabis, thanks in part to the work that Eric Stevens has been doing. Josephine Cannella-Krehl, we cannot thank you enough for continuing to bring the dialogue to professionals. We've got to change the conversation. We're here every first and third Thursday with Think Twice Thursdays, and we've already decided that the next topic is going to be shame. So,
shame and guilt.
Shame and guilt. Shame and guilt. So, is it, are you
just making this so I can't stay away, aren't you?
Yeah, I don't know. How interested are you in agriculture? Because I think we're going to talk about the harvest during the last show in October. And I want to do a canathon. I want people who will help me do a 24-hour History Cannabis fun event to raise money. Jerry Lewis will have the door open. We'll have people managing the phones. So if you get to the end of this segment and you have enjoyed it, if you have been part of the Cannabis Action Network, or if you're anxious to be part of the network moving forward, we would invite you to join online at flcan.org. Be sure to check out what Josephine is doing. Josephine Cannella-Krehl, following her on Facebook is the best way. Eric, I have mentioned We Educate Wednesdays every show. So we're sending people your way.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. It is a pleasure to work with such wonderful people.
Thank you for getting on, and thank you for all the work that you guys have done over the years and continue to do.
You have to say what we've done, because one of the things that I love really about this is that there's a core of us that have been to kind of walking down this road arm in arm for many, many moons now. So I say the work that we've done, even though we're, plugged into different places, my favorite thing is that we all plug in together and keep these dialogues going. So you know what I'm doing and I know what you're doing, and we can all come to the human entourage effect, right?
Yeah.
Together we're much stronger and much more powerful and much more effective than we ever could be on our own.
And the state's way too big. There's not enough of us that know what we're talking about, that are been up to Tallahassee and kind of all around the conferences, and I can't wait till we can all get back together in person, and looking forward to getting up by the office there too, Jodi, hopefully next week. So
2 weeks. We'll be live again in 2 weeks if you want to talk about shame and guilt. I do want to wrap it up for people who have stuck with us this long. Thank you all very much. Thank you for my lovely Miss Mary Jane Manners, Ethel Rowland, and Justice here, and all of the folks who stick with us and have helped bring us this far. The beautiful thing about the entourage effect, as we know, is that we are discovering new cannabinoids every day. And so if you have not yet taken your place among the leadership in the cannabis movement in Florida, the time is now. We are happy to discover you. Come find out what you can do with us. See you in 2 weeks.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Great seeing you.
Bye.
Thank you, Justice.
Let's see if the video actually ends.
Well, and you'll get the video.
It's
up.
done.
Okay.
So I have